Okay, hopefully that will work. It is 8:20, so let me get started. Pull up my PowerPoint and we'll get started from the beginning. There we go, slideshow. Okay, so welcome. My name's David Tansey. I am on Forest Road, since we're saying our streets. And I am a math teacher. You can't quite see my shirt here, but I've got a fraction joke shirt. I'm a math teacher, high school math teacher, and I also teach personal finance. And sometime in the past 6 months, Carrie and I were talking about 529 plans, and she suggested that we make it an event. We're probably going to do it twice, um, because some people said they couldn't come today and asked us to record, but I'm sure there are some people who just couldn't come and didn't ask or won't uh, won't be able to ask their questions, obviously, if they're not here. So we are going to go over the Maryland 529 plan. I'm also going to show you that you have the right to use the out-of-state Vanguard plan, which is actually Nevada's plan, though there are reasons to choose either one. The tax benefits of using the Maryland plan and the matching funds available to some families, the different investment options that are available in both, a general scenario sharing of how much you want to invest, depending on which type of fund you invest in, what you can do if you end up with more money in your fund than you need, and a note about how the law has, or how FAFSA has changed recently to consider grandparents' 529 plans differently, which might change your plans some if you're just getting started. I'm going to go through it at I hope, normal pace. I don't want to do questions until the end, but I'm happy to go back and I'm happy to share the PowerPoint. So if I'm going too fast, tell me, but I do want to make sure there's lots of time for Q&A. So let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. Okay, that's just a note. That's not and admit somebody. Okay, so 529, trying to get this. There we go. 529 plan is a tax advantage savings plan designed to encourage saving for future education expenses. Today we'll be comparing two college savings plans. Maryland used to offer a prepaid tuition plan, but it has since been retired. The main benefit of 529 plans is that their growth is tax-free, so long as the withdrawals pay for tuition, fees, room and board, book supplies, and equipment required for enrollment or attendance at an eligible educational institution. So, hello, Alana. Hopefully you were able to just get in. Oh, back to PowerPoint. So, Maryland, you are not limited to, hello, Alana. You are not limited to Maryland's 529 plan, though there are advantages to using their plan. The Maryland state tax deduction. You can deduct $2,500 per year per beneficiary from your Maryland state taxes. So that means if you got two kids and you're putting in $2,500 a year, you're able to deduct $5,000 from your Maryland state taxes. For married couples filing jointly, each spouse can deduct up to $2,500 per beneficiary per year if both have made contributions. There's no real documenting of who made the contribution, so it's pretty easy to take advantage of that, that tax advantage. A note about Maryland's plan, you can roll over deductions. So if you contribute 5,000 one year, you can deduct 2,500 this year and next year, which is nice. So Maryland also has the Save for College State Contribution Program. This program provides matching funds for up to $500 per beneficiary per year. It is income-based, and the table is listed here. So for individuals who make $49,999 or less, if you put $25 in, the state will contribute 500. That's not that's a one-time thing. But it is per year. So you can be getting an extra $500 per year. If you're filing jointly, it's under 75,000. The next bracket is 50,000 to 87,500 for individuals, or 75,000 to 125,000 if you're filing jointly. There, if you make a $100 contribution, you get a $500 match. So it is still a generous match. And then it phases out at 112,500 for the individual, or
Sure. I was watching. I was doing something.
one second, I'm gonna mute whoever that
What's
is.
that?
There we go. Okay, so it maxes out at 112,500 for the individual, or 175,000 if you're filing jointly. And then up till that amount, and remember, this is your taxable income. So it's not your gross income. It's what you put in after deductions, etc. And then if you put in $250, the state will match it one for one for an extra 250. I didn't put this on the screen, but just as a note, you do have to, one second, we got someone joining, admit. You do have to have these in, I think, by November 1st. So if you set up a monthly contribution, you want to make sure that it's all done before October. So like if you do 25 per month, then by October, that would have been $250. So don't do it divided by 12, do it divided by 10. So it's all done before November 1st. And you do have to apply for the matching funds. It's a little tedious, but it's just a form you fill out every year and you say, I want the Save for College state contribution. So Vanguard is technically Nevada's 529 plan, but 529 plans are not limited to residents, which means we can take advantage of the Vanguard plan. There are no tax advantages, and some of that's because Nevada doesn't have income tax. There are no tax advantages, but there are some reasons you might choose to use Vanguards. The primary reason is if you want a lot of control over where your money is invested. It also tends to have lower fees than Maryland's plans and a plan. I'll show you the fees in a second. If you expect to move a lot, you might want to have a Vanguard account instead of a Maryland account for simplicity's sake. Then you're not starting new funds depending on which state you're in at any given time. So fees. Maryland investments and fees are by portfolio. Age-based portfolios adjust their asset allocation as the beneficiary ages. That means it's more stocks, etc., when they're young, and more bonds as they approach college age, so that it's safer and it's less likely to be volatile like the stock market. The fees range from 0.15% to 0.78%. Fixed portfolios don't adjust and provide a range of risk options. So you can be low risk, moderate risk, high risk, which is also opportunity for high growth. But the fees also range from the point teens to the just under 1%. And the individual fund portfolios are linked to specific T. Rowe Price mutual funds. So that means if you don't want to use one of Maryland's fixed portfolios, you want to use a more general T. Rowe Price, who manages the fund for Maryland mutual fund, you can do that, and you can see the fees are and a tiny bit lower than the fixed portfolios do because they're managed by T. Rowe Price rather than Maryland's 529 plan itself. Vanguard has similar options. Their age-based portfolios differ in that you can choose a conservative, moderate, or aggressive option. They also have more portfolios to choose from. Their fees are also lower, with most being between 0.12 and 0.16%. So you can run the numbers to see how much that matters. Oh, one second. I've got to check the waiting room. It said there are people in the waiting room. The chat. Sorry, Jessica and Becky. I don't know how long you were in the waiting room. Hopefully not long. I'm just gonna mute everyone by default, but you're welcome to unmute yourself. Well, they're not. Jessica doesn't have a mic on. Okay, so we're talking about fees, 529 fees. So for those who just joined, Maryland 529 plan is the state-sponsored plan. You get tax benefits by using it, mostly a deduction, but there's also a matching program with Maryland's program. We are allowed to use an out-of-state program. Vanguard runs Nevada's program. They have more portfolios. So if people want a lot of granular decision making, the Vanguard fund might be appealing to them. They also tend to have lower fees. I'm not sure it matters that much to most people, but I wanted to share that information. So, how much should you invest? If you qualify for any of the Maryland 529 matching funds, I'd say invest at least as much as it takes to qualify, because that's free money. That's just like retirement funds at work. If they have matching funds, you want to be taking advantage of those. Then you have to ask two questions. How much risk are you willing to assume? Less risk means you'll have to contribute more. More risk means you might not have as much as you expected to have because it's more volatile. How much, and also, how much do you hope to have available to help with college? So I put together three simple scenarios. Oh, nope, there's a little bit more. I guess I put in some of the actual numbers. What types of returns are we talking about? I can't compare all the funds' performance tonight, but fortunately, both sites make it easy to look at past performance. The portfolio of 2024, which I chose because it shows what a kid who's graduating right now would have experienced. It has averaged 6.67% since inception. Remember, that becomes less aggressive as it matures. So it started out being mostly stocks. It's now a mix of stocks and bonds. Some funds, like the Equity Index 500, that's a Maryland fund, matches the S&P 500 and are more aggressive with much greater highs and lows. So over the past 13 years, it's been 10 point something percent. I did 13 because you'll see in the scenarios I come up with on the next couple slides. And then some, which one they call bond and income, are more conservative. That one has averaged 4.78 since 2001, which is actually pretty good for a conservative portfolio. The Vanguard funds are multiple. There's no way I'm going to do all of those, but they do have some nice aggressive ones if you want to have a more aggressive portfolio. Like the growth index portfolio has averaged 11.74 since 2002. I'll give this disclaimer later, but I'll say it again. Past performance does not predict future returns. So you're always making some speculation here. You don't know what's going to happen over the next 10 or 12 or 18 or whatever years. So I came up with three scenarios. The first two will assume you have a 5-year-old. So that means your kid's just starting school and you're starting to think about these things. The last one will be for a newborn if you are really on top of it and you're starting younger. And I wanted to show that to show those extra 5 years really do matter. So this scenario assumes that you have a 5-year-old. I'm using historical performance. We cannot know future performance. All assume we want meaning these three scenarios. All of these three scenarios assume we want 40,000 in their fund when they're 18. So the age-based fund averaging 6.67% from age 5 to 18, you'd have to contribute 164 a month to have 40,000 when they are 18. With the S&P 500 based fund, if we use the last 13 years performance, you would have had to have put $130 a month in order to get $40,000 when they are 18. If you had a bond-based fund, it would have been $204 a month. So That makes sense. The scenario one, age-based fund, is a sort of moderate risk one because it starts out with stocks. Scenario two is higher risk because it's basically all stocks. In fact, it is all stocks. And scenario three is mostly bonds, and so it's more conservative. So the most aggressive, if the stock market's doing what it has done historically, you put the least amount in. There's just the risk you have, just like with retirement, that if the stock market crashes their senior year, then you're in trouble. So this second scenario is just doubling how much we want. We want 80,000 a year, sorry, 80,000 available when they turn 18. So the number is mostly just double, that you need to have 338 a month in the age-based fund, 263 a month in the stock market-based fund, and 414 a month in the bond-based fund. So because the ages were the same and the amounts were simply double, this is basically a proportional change. So you can use these to sort of, if you have different numbers, you can create the ratios pretty easily to say, how much would I need if I wanted 20,000 or 50,000 or whatever other number you want. The final scenario is if you have a newborn. I'm using historical performance. Again, we cannot know future performance. All assume these three scenarios assume we want 100,000 in their fund when they're 18. So in scenario one, the age-based fund, we need to put 202 a month. In the stock market-based fund, we need 161. And in the bond-based fund, we need 285. I'm going to go back 2 slides really quickly to when we were saying we wanted 40,000. So notice, to get 40,000 for our 5-year-old, we needed 164, 130, and 204. To get 100,000 for our newborn, we need 202, 161, and 285. I know it's not easy to remember all those numbers, but they're not super different, and we're getting more than double the money. So the reason I want to highlight that is starting early matters. The earlier you start, the more compound interest works to your advantage. And so you really do want to start as quickly as you can so you get as many years of growth as possible. Another thing, can you change investment plans? Meaning, can I go, oh, I want an aggressive one. Maybe actually that's too risky. Let me switch. That's my plan. You are allowed to change it. It's called rebalancing. And I can say, you know what? I don't want these high growth ones anymore. My boys are in elementary school. They're just starting. My 5-year-old will be starting kindergarten this fall. So they are in aggressive funds right now. When they enter high school, assuming we're not in a bear market and the market seems healthy, I'll switch it to an age-based fund so that I can trust that it's a little more secure as they're finishing up their pre-college years. How much do you really need? That's up to you, right? Obviously, this is all about what you can afford. No one wants you to put in money that you don't have available, and then be too tight. And then I'll talk a little bit about what is too much money to put in. But I wanted to give people some sense of numbers and show them where they can look up numbers. So the University of Maryland public schools are all around the same tuition, 11,000 to 12,000. The exception to that is St. Mary's, which is the honors sort of liberal arts college in Southern Maryland, and it's 13,000 something. But you're looking at about 11,000 in today's dollars, and it's going to grow. The past 20 years, tuition has grown faster than inflation. So it's hard to tell exactly what you're going to need 10, 15, or 18 years from now, but this is where things are, and you can try to gauge from there how much you think it's going to go up. Obviously, policies could change. They could reduce tuition because that's a state decision. Room and board nowadays ranges from about 14,000 to 16,000 a year if you are considering that. Private schools are so all over the place. I didn't even want to give any numbers. There's a great website called tuitiontracker.org. It allows you to put your household income bracket, and then it makes a comparison between the sticker price and the net price for that income band. So for example, Georgetown has a sticker price of 90,000 a year, but has a net price of 56,000 a year for households with incomes of 110 or up. So that's the highest one it has. So that'll give you a sense. I didn't write these numbers down. I'm not sure why I didn't make a slide. I did look up what the typical amount of debt is, and the typical college graduate comes out with between $30,000 and $40,000 in debt. It's a tiny bit lower for public schools, but that's a useful number. It's not as straight as that, unfortunately, because that number doesn't tell you how much parents contributed, etc. It just says how much they came out with. So some people say, I just want to use a savings account. I don't want to risk having saved up $50,000 and then my kid gets a full ride. Fortunately, they have changed the plan recently to accommodate some of those scenarios, and some have existed since its inception, and some are new. So the new one is you can contribute to your child's Roth IRA. Now, a Roth individual retirement account is after tax, which means their growth will not be taxed. So you can put the maximum, which right now is $7,000 a year, for up to 5 years in your child's name, so they can start their retirement fund early. And just so you know, 5 years right now would be $35,000 total, $7,000 a year. And depending on how the stock market does, that could be between 0.6 million and $1.3 million if they retire. I'm forgetting what year I used, if it was 65 or 67, but it's a pretty substantial return. So that could be a real boost to your kids' retirement. You can also change the beneficiary. So this has always been true. So if one kid gets a full ride, okay, switch it to another kid. And it doesn't even have to be a kid. It can even be yourself or a spouse or a niece or nephew, grandchildren, etc. So it can serve as a pretty flexible tool, so long as someone's going to school who needs it. And I like to say it can also help with building multi-generational wealth. And then finally, you can withdraw the funds, but you then, meaning if you don't spend it on education, you would pay taxes on them and you pay a penalty. Taxes aren't so shocking because you would have paid taxes if that had been a regular investment fund, but there is a 10% penalty. But just so you know, there are a lot of exemptions to that penalty. For instance, if they get a scholarship, so if they get a $50,000 scholarship and you put $50,000 in their 529 plan, you can withdraw 100% of that tax-free and penalty-free. So one last detail. Maybe I should rescind that. I'm not 100% sure if it's tax-free, so I'd have to look that up, but it's definitely penalty-free. So one last detail, and this is new, brand new with FAFSA. If your child's grandparents want to contribute to their 529 plans, it might make sense for them, the grandparents, to create their own account. Recent changes to FAFSA rules no longer count grandparents' 529 plans as parental assets. So that can increase your child's need-based financial reward. So let me make sure I wasn't a terrible host and didn't admit some people. And then I'm happy to take questions. So it doesn't look like there's anyone in the waiting room. So good. So we got a hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Unless it goes crazy, I think we can just unmute ourselves.
Hi,
Hey,
this is Carissa. I have two quick questions.
sure.
One is on the use of the funds. Like you said, if your kid gets a scholarship, could you still use the funds for like room and board, or is it only for tuition?
No, so let me go back to the very beginning.
Sorry, maybe that was
I
there.
said that, and I want to make sure I got this language from them, so that's why I'm going back.
Oh
Tuition
yeah,
fees,
perfect.
room and board, books, supplies, and equipment required for enrollment or attendance at an eligible educational institution.
Awesome. That's what I thought. Thank you. And just on the fees, like depending on what kind of investment you choose, are the fees taken out of your annual contribution, or is it like you pay that in addition to your contribution?
So it's taken out of your annual contribution. So there is no extra fee. Like if you say I'm putting
Okay,
$25, it will withdraw from your account as $25. Just not all of that $25 will go into the fund because the fees will be deducted.
gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay, we got a couple hands up. Go ahead and just unmute yourself. There's Mike, and I think I saw Bree. Oh, no, we have Alana. I think actually Alana was next. So go ahead, Alana.
Hi, good evening. I was wanted to know about the matching program.
Uh-huh.
So how does that work? If you fall within the income, you put in, does it happen automatically, or is
So
there something
it
that
takes a little
prompts it?
while for them to make the contribution, but it does basically happen on its own. I don't know why it's not having me go back. Um,
Okay.
So yeah, so you do have to apply for it. I have it in my calendar to just remind me to do it. I'm forgetting when it is, but it's fairly early in the year that you can apply for it. And you just say, I'm going to make this much of a contribution by November 1st. And then sometime after November 1st, they make the match. Um, and at
Sometime
least for
after
me,
November 1st.
it's been whatever it is, depending on your individual or joint income.
And how do they find out? Because I'm assuming like we don't file until the following
Oh
year. So
yeah,
how
so it's your previous year. I mean they it's run by the state, so they have access to your Maryland income, and it is based off your Maryland income, not your federal income. So those sometimes are different things because of
oh,
deductions.
yes. Okay. And so there's a notification that you put in your phone and that prompts you to check
Yeah,
to
I
see if
just
they
remind. I think
contribute.
I do it in March, but I'd have to look it up because it's become so automatic. I don't really think about it. But yeah, you put it in. You just have to remember once a year to sign up for the Save for College program to say yes, I'm making contributions this year and I want the matching. And yeah, it's been a little while since I've done it, so I can't remember super vividly what the form is like, but it's called Save for College like that. So you could look it up and get started right now if you wanted.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So don't be shy. We only got a few minutes left on our free meeting. So um
Um, can we ask your advice on should you start two separate funds for two kids or one fund for and split between two kids? And then the second follow-up is for grandparents and parents, can they each have a fund for the same child?
yes, there's no limit on um how many people can have a fund with that beneficiary. Um, so I have separate funds for my two boys. They will actually only be in college at the same time for 1 year. So it wouldn't be so crazy to switch beneficiaries. You can even switch beneficiaries in the same years. You can be like, okay, Johnny, pay his tuition. Then change beneficiary to Greg. Okay, Greg, pay his tuition. I wouldn't want to do that a lot. So if your kids are probably going to be going to school at different times, personally, I would create separate programs, but there's no monetary benefit. The logistical one is the one I just said, and there is a tiny risk that, you know, it becomes one fund is, like the older kid doesn't have as much money as they needed, and then the younger kid, gets a full ride or something like that. But some of that is impossible to plan for. But my default would to be to have one account per child. And actually, now that I think about it, because of the matching, you can only have one beneficiary per fund. So if you're trying to do the matching, you have to have more than one account.
Okay. And then if your grandparents don't live in Maryland, is this still the right?
Yeah, they can still do it. Then it doesn't matter as much. So they might want to do the Vanguard one because it's lower fee, and they'd actually be the ones making the distributions. So it really doesn't matter that much, and it technically might even benefit them to use their state fund. But both allow outside gifts. So if they're not going to contribute a lot, or if you're like just trying to put the U gift out there for birthdays or something, both Maryland and Vanguard make it pretty easy for other people to contribute. So that's also an option.
Okay, but that's not your recommendation if it's significant contributions.
If it's
You would recommend they
significant,
have
I
their own.
wouldn't do that. I would say let them start their own fund because that could really change their FAFSA when it comes time for FAFSA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, who's next? So Mike, I think we haven't heard from you yet.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh,
That-
my bad.
Mike's wife, Haley.
Hello.
Okay. And Jessica.
Hi, David. This is Bree.
Hey,
Most
Bree.
most of my questions got answered through other people, but one question, did you sign up like just through the state and then you connect it with your employer to like pull it out of your paycheck untaxed, or do you do it through your employer?
I do it just through the Maryland529.com website. So
And how
yeah,
does
I
that
make,
work with like them getting the money untaxed from your pay?
well, the contributions are after tax.
Oh, I see. Got
Yeah,
it.
the contributions are after tax, and then you can do the deduction on your Maryland state taxes. But because it's a state program, the only deduction is from your state taxes.
Got it. And thank you for doing this, David.
Sure. So I did want to show that the Maryland program's easy. It's Maryland529.com. The Vanguard one, you sort of just have to Google it because it's not as simple of a website. But you should be able to see here, and you see they have lots and lots of funds to choose from, and they have a risk tolerance for each. Some are a little, I won't say redundant, but they wouldn't apply to everybody, right? Because they're age-based. And then the Maryland one also has, so here's the state contribution program, Save for College, and it has investment options, and they tell you what the performance is in those. Okay. Anyone else? I don't think we ever heard from Jessica.
Hey, so I have a question about the Roth IRA situation.
Yep.
So like say there's like extra money or whatever, or they don't use the money that's in the fund. Can we leave it through college and they're done and there's still money? Can that money then be moved into a Roth IRA?
I believe it has to happen while they're in college. And it doesn't really, like, it's the 5 years is the idea that some people take 5 years to graduate or more, but they sort of made up that number. So I believe that the way it works is while they're in school, you say, okay, you're not using 1/4 or 1/5 of your fund. Let's put the remainder in your Roth IRA.
Okay.
And for you, mathematically, it's the same, right? Because in either scenario, it's growing. And you actually want it in the Roth IRA to be growing because then its benefits are tax-free indefinitely.
Right. So, but Roth IRA, you can only contribute into a Roth IRA based upon how much income your child has, right? Like how much
Well,
income they make.
so my point, there's the maximum. They can have earned $0 that year, and you can still put 7,000 into their fund using today's number.
Into which fund? The Roth
Into
or
the Roth from their 529. So it is
from
like
the okay.
Yeah, it's a great cheat code if like you're not worried about them needing 100% of the money. Like it's
Yeah.
great to have a little extra because most most people in college aren't making enough money to max their Roth IRA at age 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So it's pretty sweet to have a maxed out IRA that young.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to cheat the system that way.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So while they're in college, that's when we
Yes.
essentially flip it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a quick question, piggybacking on that Roth conversation. So say in the event that you have a kid and he or she decides that they don't want to go to college, can
Yep.
you make yourself the beneficiary
Yes.
and
Yes, you
put
can.
that money into a Roth?
Into your own Roth. That's an
Yeah.
interesting point. I don't know. So that's a great one that I'll look up because that is an interesting My guess is the answer is yes, but that it then counts as your contribution for that year. So you can't like double it those years.
Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
that's just me speculating on sort of my sense of what they can and can't make you do. And if you're allowed to make yourself a beneficiary, my guess